I'm Will Ndlovu. I'm your host for this final section of Space Transformers Live, and I'm so pleased to be here amongst such an inspirational group of young participants today. Now, it's my pleasure to be moderating our next exciting panel discussion, this time on anti-racism. Now, I'm delighted to welcome the panelists, British DJ, musician, music producer, podcaster, entrepreneur, and journalist, Farah Nanji. Uganda's only classified Paralympian swimmer, Husna Kukundakwe, and human rights advocate, from Lebanon and UN Foundation Next Generation Fellow, Aya Maria Ruhana. Panelists, welcome. Great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Great to meet you all. Great to meet you all. Now, look, if you guys have watched any of the other panel discussions which we've had on today, you'll know that we begin by taking a closer look at the issue that's being discussed. First of all, let's get back to the basic question here. What is racism? Aya Maria, could we start with you?
Yeah, sure. I think that at some point, all of us do have some difficulty in understanding that we're different, yet we do have equal rights. So racism is really discriminating and directing hatred towards someone because of their color, ethnicity, or national origin. And it really has no basis other than you're different, so you're either supposed to be inferior, superior, or dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. And Farah, what's your definition of racism?
Definitely echoing the same sort of things there about, it's in the end, it's a belief that something we can't choose, the race that we're born to, that we belong to, is either more inferior or superior to another, and in the end causes a huge amount of hatred and injustice as a belief that we are either inferior or superior, and don't recognize that in the end all humans are equal.
Exactly. Love that. And Husna?
Yes, try to echo all the rest. It's because we're different races, people will think that, we're different, but we are all one, we're all human beings, and there's no need for discrimination, there's just need for equality and just being one as human beings.
We are all one indeed. We are all one. And what does anti-racism mean to you, Farah?
To me, I think it really means creating an equilibrium in society where we are very conscious that we make unbiased and anti-racist choices in all aspects of our lives, and where unfair decisions, they're not made against us simply by something that we can't control about where we come from and what we're born into, because where we come from is such a powerful grounding, and it should be respected and celebrated instead of being made to feel uncomfortable or discriminated against, or even taken to war for. All corners of this world are beautiful, and each place has such a unique thing that makes it their own. So it should always be respected and not hated upon.
Exactly. And Husna?
It means that we don't discriminate other people because of their race, because they can't really control it. So we should just accept each other for the race that we are, for who we are, and just fight against people who practice such vices. Fighting for the rights of people with color, fighting the rights of people who are, trying to be themselves and being discriminated because they are Black or Asian or Indians. So anti-racism is just fighting against that kind of discrimination.
Exactly. And Aya Maria?
Yes, so really echoing what they just said, racism is not something natural. So when, for example, children are not really racist, so it's something acquired. And because it is something we learn, it is therefore something we can unlearn. And anti-racism, to me, therefore, it's a process of unlearning prejudice and discrimination and taking proactive action to stand with those who are discriminated against and advocate with them for a larger unlearning process that is happening at the global level. So we're all unlearning all that we've been taught about racism together.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it kind of doesn't really matter where you're from, what color you are. We should all kind of work together to fight racism as well. I think it's so important that kind of everyone gets involved in this fight. But panelists, let me ask, where should we go or where should we look to educate ourselves about racism? Because some people don't know.
For example, we should just go on social media, because there are lots of anti-racism activists around the world, including especially in sports. I've seen football clubs in the Premier League having anti-racism badges on them. And I think sport is a great way to support the anti-racism movement. For example, me, I am always swimming with people who are white. Almost the whole place is white, but they accept me for who I am. And they don't discriminate me. They don't stop me from doing races. I just go there, be myself, and I'm, welcomed with open hands.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but Husna, what happens when you're in a situation where... Yeah, exactly. Sports is very important, actually. But Husna, what happens when you're in a situation where you are, let's just say football or rugby, and let's say someone's in a football or rugby team and they are the only black person there or the only Asian person there, and they're kind of scared to speak out. What do they do in that situation? And they've experienced racism.
That situation is really tough. I would understand the kind of situation they're in, because there's lots of pressure on their shoulders. They are trying to maybe represent the black community, and when they try to speak up, and maybe instead of listening to their opinions, they are rather shut down. So in that situation, you just have to fight harder and maybe pick up some friends along the way, or maybe fellow teammates who see that something isn't right, and maybe that coach isn't treating you right, or maybe the referee is discriminating you. So those friends will just help you. They will help you fight whatever is happening, and just make friends, ask for help when you need it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why, kind of like going back to the point I made earlier, where I feel like everyone should get involved in this fight. So if, let's just say, you are the only Asian or black person in the team, if everyone's kind of involved in this fight against anti-racism, then it will kind of help make the minority in the group feel like they can speak out, which is important. So thank you so much for bringing up that point. I am Maria. What do you think? Where should we go, or where should we look to educate ourselves about racism?
Okay, so I come from a human rights background and I work with the United Nations. So where I would personally look is both at the local and at the global level. Looking at the local level is important. For example, looking at NGOs and movements that work to eradicate racism at local or national level. It really has a big importance because racism looks different in different contexts. So it's the same thing, but it manifests itself in different forms. So here it's important to really look around you and see where are those organizations are countering racism right where I am. And for example, I will speak about my Lebanese context. There is the anti-racism movement, there is EGNA, and those are organizations working in Lebanon to eradicate racism. Now, at the global level, this one is a bit biased because I work with the UN. I would go to the United Nations. On their website, there's actually a page called United Nations Fight Racism. And there you can find answers to questions like, why do we fight racism? How do we do it? Who is responsible to it? And there are also a lot of fun highlights, quizzes you can take to test your bias against different people so that you know where you stand and how to work on yourself to take that anti-racist stance. And also based on what Husna said, she really sparked something with me. It's that every person should, when wanting to educate themselves about racism, should go with what they're interested in. And you will find a community fighting racism there. For example, Husna is in sports, and she found that sports is the place that would be the best way to educate herself about that. I'm more with human rights, so those organizations are my go-to. So it really depends what you like and what you're interested in. Just go deeper into that, and you will find a community there that is actually fighting racism.
Yeah, no, you've brought up so many great valid points. And I think you mentioned as well, I think you said there's quizzes online. What does someone do if they have just realized that they are racist? They have grown up in a family that's racist, but they didn't realize it. And now they're out in the big old wide world. They've now realized that actually my views aren't right. What's the first thing they do? Do they go online? Do they try and do a quiz? Do they talk to a friend, a counselor? Because I guess some people in those situations might be scared because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm racist, but I don't want to tell people I'm racist. But how do they, from that very moment on, solve that issue? Maria, what do you reckon?
Yes, I think that, as I said previously, racism is something you learn, so it's also something you can unlearn. So I'd say simply the most important part is to realize you are actually being racist. And once you do this realization, it's very easy to make the shift towards taking anti-racism steps in order to be a better person and a better. So if you have ever been directly racist towards someone, go and apologize to them. Tell them, I just didn't realize I was being racist, and what I might have said last week might have hurt you. So sorry. And actually ask for those people's help, like the people you would have discriminated against. Ask for their help to see how you can best be an ally instead of discriminating against them. So that would be the simplest way. It doesn't have to be something too big. Just take that first step and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and exactly. I love what you said. Accountability is very important. Like when the person realizes they're racist, apologies, and then trying to, of course, educate yourself. And Farah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think echoing, the first step, it really begins at home. So, we have to recognize as we progress through life, as I correctly said, no one's born racist or anti-racist. These all results from the choices that we make and the surroundings that we find ourselves in. And so I think as we sort of progress through life and we become more unconscious with humanity, there should always be a very deep ongoing self-awareness and self-reflection of our choices and what we do, even if we're not racist ourselves. There could be people in our families, messages at work, even the institutions that we serve, and having that sort of ongoing process is, I think it's a lifelong sort of path that we should be committed to. But then I also think, in tandem with that, I think it's really important to learn about history and the horrific racial crimes, against humanity that have happened. And not just ignore them just because we live in the West or whatever. We need to find perspectives from different sources. We need to challenge those sources, whether it's reading authors, digging deeper to find those opinions from locals on the ground, workshops, podcasts. There's a plethora of resources there to educate ourselves, and it is our responsibility to leave this world in a better place than what we found it. And it doesn't change by just dismissing, that it exists, even if we are not racist ourselves.
Exactly. I think, Farah, one of the key words there you said is learning and actually just like educating ourselves as well. Do you feel like maybe even in schools, when we go back years, like are children at schools being taught about this stuff? And should they be taught more, do you reckon, so that they grow up to be more knowledgeable?
I mean, I think, the education system is obviously in a crisis state, and it has been, pre-COVID, and the whole notion of education is being challenged because, it's not just about how much you can learn. It's really about who you become and how you treat other people, number one. And those sort of soft skills is what makes us human. So I think there is a lot more to be done in school, about sort of developing those soft skills and recognizing that each one of us are equal and we have a human to human connection. I do genuinely believe there's a lot more schools can do, because again, it begins at the grassroots level and it goes on to shape who we become and how we treat other people. And so, that's what I believe.